As the sole survivor of Vault 111, Samantha had seen her fair share of unimaginable horrors in the Commonwealth. She had fought against raiders, super mutants, and even a robotic army controlled by a mad scientist. But nothing could have prepared her for what she would find on the moon. It had been over a year since she emerged from the vault, and she had spent that time trying to rebuild and make a life for herself in this new world. But when she stumbled upon an old abandoned shuttle, curiosity got the better of her and she couldn't resist the urge to see what was beyond the Earth's atmosphere. After a bumpy ride and a few close calls, Samantha landed on the moon and stepped out onto its desolate surface. She marveled at the sight before her, the Earth looming in the distance and the endless expanse of space surrounding her. But her awe was short-lived as she noticed a small building in the distance. Without hesitation, she made her way towards it, her pit boy guiding her through the low gravity. As she approached the building, she noticed that it was heavily fortified with advanced technology. This was no ordinary moon base, and Samantha's curiosity grew even more. She cautiously made her way inside, her gun at the ready. The interior of the base was just as technologically advanced as the exterior, with sleek white walls and advanced machinery. But what caught Samantha's attention was a terminal in the center of the room. She quickly made her way towards it, her curiosity getting the better of her. As she accessed the terminal, she was shocked to find that it belonged to the Institute, the mysterious organization that had caused so much chaos in the Commonwealth. But what surprised her even more was the fact that this was a moon base for the Institute. Samantha's mind raced with questions. What was the Institute doing on the moon? Why did they need a base here? And most importantly, were there any survivors? Her questions were soon answered when she heard a voice behind her. Well, what do we have here? The voice was cold and calculating, and Samantha immediately knew that it belonged to a member of the Institute. She turned around to face a man in a lab coat, his face hidden behind a mask. Who are you? Samantha demanded, her gun still at the ready. My name is Dr. Julian, and I am the head of this moon base, the man replied. And you, my dear, are an unexpected guest. Samantha lowered her gun slightly, intrigued by the man's calm demeanor. What is the Institute doing on the moon? She asked. Dr. Julian chuckled. You think you can just waltz in here and demand answers? How naive, he said. But since you're here, I might as well tell you. The Institute sent us here to continue our research and experiments in a more isolated environment. Samantha's blood boiled at the thought of the Institute continuing their twisted experiments on the moon. I won't let you continue your atrocities, she said firmly. Dr. Julian's expression turned serious. I'm afraid that's not your decision to make, he said, his hand reaching for a hidden weapon. But Samantha was faster. She fired her gun, hitting Dr. Julian in the shoulder. He fell to the ground, writhing in pain. Samantha quickly made her way to the terminal, determined to find out more about the Institute's plans. As she searched through the files, she discovered that the Institute was planning to launch a new wave of synths to the Commonwealth with the intention of taking over and controlling its inhabitants. But there was also a contingency plan in case the Institute was destroyed, a plan that involved using the moon base as a safe haven for the remaining members. Samantha knew she couldn't let the Institute's plans come to fruition. She had to destroy the base and put an end to their twisted experiments once and for all. With determination in her heart and a sense of justice, Samantha scoured the base, taking out any remaining Institute members. It was a long and grueling battle, but she emerged victorious. As she made her way back to her shuttle, she couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. She had not only avenged the Commonwealth, but she had also put an end to the Institute's plans on the moon. As she flew back to Earth, Samantha couldn't help but wonder what other secrets the Commonwealth held. But for now, she was content with the knowledge that she had taken care of what remained of the Institute and put an end to their twisted plan. Samantha had been the only one to escape the vault alive. She had emerged from her cryogenic sleep to find her family and friends dead, killed by the malfunctioning cryoparts. She was the sole survivor, left to fend for herself in the harsh, post-apocalyptic wasteland that was once her home. As she traveled through the ruins of the world she once knew, she encountered all sorts of dangers. From mutated creatures to ruthless raiders, Samantha had seen it all. But nothing could have prepared her for what she would encounter next. It was a dark, stormy night when she stumbled upon a crashed alien spacecraft. At first, she thought it was just another abandoned ruin, but as she got closer, she could see that it was something entirely different. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen before, with sleek, metallic surfaces and strange markings etched into its hull. Curiosity getting the better of her, Samantha cautiously approached the ship. As she got closer, the ship suddenly sprang to life, its engines humming and lights flickering on. Samantha stumbled back in shock, unsure of what to make of the sudden activity. Just then, a hatch on the side of the ship opened, and a figure emerged. Samantha couldn't believe her eyes. It was a creature unlike anything she had ever seen before. It was tall and slender, with green, scaly skin and large, black eyes. It stood on two legs, with long, thin arms that ended in three-fingered hands. The creature looked at Samantha with curiosity and spoke in a language she couldn't understand. But to her surprise, she found that she could understand it perfectly. Greetings, human, the creature said. I am Tar, captain of the Coernixian vessel. Who are you and how did you come to be here? Samantha was taken aback by the creature's ability to speak her language, but she quickly regained her composure. My name is Samantha, she replied. I came from a nearby vault, I was the only one to survive. Tar looked at Samantha with a mix of pity and admiration. I am sorry for your loss, he said. But we must speak more of this later. We are in need of assistance. Samantha was hesitant. She had heard stories of aliens before, but she never thought she would actually encounter one. She didn't know if she could trust them or if they were a threat to her. I am not sure I can help you, she said cautiously. One of the leaders, a former construction worker named Jack, came up with a plan. He suggested using the remaining cars and scraps to reinforce the wall, making it stronger and higher. The other leaders agreed, and they immediately put the plan into action. It was a race against time as the survivors worked tirelessly to strengthen the wall while fending off the relentless attacks from the zombies. But in the end, their hard work paid off. The wall was stronger than ever, and the survivors could finally catch their breath. With the immediate threat dealt with, the leaders turned their attention back to the food shortage. They knew they had to find a new source of food, and they needed to do it fast. After much discussion, they came up with a plan to send out a team to a nearby supermarket that had been abandoned since the outbreak. The team, led by a former chef named Sarah, set out early the next morning. They had to be careful as they made their way through the empty streets, constantly on the lookout for any zombies. When they reached the supermarket, they found it was infested with the undead. But they were determined to get the supplies they needed, and they fought their way through the zombies. It was a risky mission, but they managed to get enough supplies to sustain the city for a few more weeks. When they returned, they were greeted as heroes, and the survivors celebrated with a feast made from the food they had brought back. As the survivors enjoyed their meal, they couldn't help but think about the challenges they had faced and overcome. They had come a long way since the outbreak, and they had learned to work together and support each other in the face of adversity. The leaders knew that there would be more challenges ahead, but they were confident that they could face them together as a community. They had created a new home for themselves in this makeshift city, and they were determined to protect it at all costs. The zombie apocalypse may have destroyed their old way of life, but it had also brought them together and made them stronger than ever before. The world was in ruins. Buildings were collapsed, roads were cracked, and the sky was a constant shade of grey. This was the result of the nuclear fallout that had devastated the planet. In this desolate world, a group of survivors roamed the wasteland, trying to find a way to survive. Their leader was a man named Jack. He was a former soldier who had seen the horrors of war and was determined to keep his group safe. His right-hand man was a mechanic named Jake who was skilled at scavenging for supplies and fixing anything that needed repair. There was also Sarah, a tough and resourceful woman who knew how to handle a gun and had a knack for negotiation. Lastly, there was Peter, a young man who was eager to prove himself and make a difference in this new world. The group had been traveling for weeks, scavenging for food and supplies to keep them going. They had heard rumors of a place called Sanctuary where people were living in safety and peace. Jack was determined to find this place and make it their new home. As they wandered through the wasteland, they came across a group of raiders. These were ruthless individuals who preyed on the weak and took whatever they wanted. Jack knew they had to be careful, as the raiders were armed and dangerous. Stay low and keep quiet, Jack whispered to the group as they hid behind some rubble. We need to find a way to get past them without being seen. They watched as the raiders ransacked a nearby building, completely unaware of the group's presence. Jack noticed that one of the raiders had a keycard on his belt. He knew that this could be their chance to get into the building and scavenge for supplies. I have an idea, Jack said, turning to the group. Sarah, you and Peter sneak around to the back of the building and see if you can find a way in. Jake and I will create a distraction to draw the raiders away. The group split up, with Sarah and Peter sneaking around to the back of the building while Jack and Jake made noise to distract the raiders. It worked, and the raiders quickly left to investigate the noise. Sarah and Peter were able to find a way into the building and gather supplies while Jack and Jake kept the raiders occupied. They met back up and quickly made their escape before the raiders returned. As they continued on their journey, they encountered more challenges and dangers, but they never gave up. They were determined to reach Sanctuary and start a new life. Finally, after weeks of traveling, they reached the outskirts of Sanctuary. The group was amazed at what they saw. The city was thriving, with people going about their daily lives and buildings still standing tall. It was a stark contrast to the wasteland they had been traveling through. As they entered the city, they were greeted by a man named Max, who was the leader of Sanctuary. He welcomed them with open arms and offered them a place to stay. Jack was grateful and relieved to have finally found a safe haven for his group. Over the next few weeks, the group settled into their new home and started to make a life for themselves. Jack and Jake helped with the city's defenses, while Sarah and Peter worked on building and repairing homes. They were finally starting to feel like they belonged somewhere. However, their newfound peace was short-lived. One day, a group of raiders attacked the city, causing chaos and destruction. Max was injured during the attack, leaving the city vulnerable. Jack knew that they had to do something to protect their new home. We can't let these raiders destroy everything we've built, Jack said to the group. We need to fight back and defend our home. The group agreed, and they quickly gathered weapons and supplies to prepare for the battle. Sarah and Peter went out to scout the area, while Jack and Jake worked on fortifying the city's defenses. As the raiders approached, the group fought back with all their might. It was a tough battle, but they were able to hold off the raiders and protect the city. Max was grateful for their bravery and declared them heroes of Sanctuary. From that day on, the group became known as the Defenders of Sanctuary. They were hailed as heroes by the people and were given the respect and admiration they deserved. As time went on, the city continued to thrive under the leadership of Max and the hard work of the group. They were able to rebuild and make Sanctuary a safe and prosperous place for all. Jack, Jake, Sarah, and Peter had found a new family in each other and a new home in Sanctuary. They had gone through the trials and tribulations of the wasteland together, and in the end, they had found a new beginning. The nuclear fallout had destroyed the world, but it had also brought these four strangers together, and they had formed an unbreakable bond. They knew that as long as they had each other, they could face anything that came their way. The wasteland may have taken away everything they once knew, but it had also given them a new purpose and a new family. And for that, they were grateful. It had been weeks since the outbreak began. The once bustling town of Muldroff was now a desolate landscape filled with the walking dead. The few survivors left were struggling to survive, scavenging for food and supplies while trying to avoid the hordes of zombies that roamed the streets. One of these survivors was a young woman named Lily. She had been a nurse before the outbreak and had managed to make it to a small house on the outskirts of town. She had been living there for a few weeks now, trying to keep a low profile and survive on the limited supplies she had gathered. One day, as she was searching for supplies in a nearby house, she came across a man named Jack. He was a former police officer who had been separated from his group during the chaos of the outbreak. He was injured and in need of help, so Lily took him back to her house and tended to his wounds. As they talked, they realized that they both had a similar goal to survive and find a way out of Muldroff. They decided to team up, knowing that their chances of survival would be better together. They spent the next few days fortifying the house and gathering supplies. They also came across two other survivors, a man named David and a teenage girl named Sarah. David had been a mechanic before the outbreak and Sarah was a high school student. They joined forces with Lily and Jack, forming a small but determined group. Together, they came up with a plan to escape Muldroff. They would gather as many supplies as they could and make their way to the nearby West Point, where they had heard there was a military base that was still operational. The journey to West Point was dangerous. They had to navigate through the streets filled with zombies and often had to fight their way through. But they were determined to make it, and their determination paid off when they finally arrived at the military base. They were greeted by soldiers who were surprised to see survivors. The soldiers had been stationed at the base when the outbreak occurred and had managed to secure the area. They welcomed Lily and her group, offering them shelter and protection. As they settled into the base, they learned more about the outbreak. It had started in a nearby prison, where a riot had broken out and the prisoners had been infected with a virus. The virus quickly spread, turning people into mindless zombies. The soldiers had been tasked with finding a cure, but so far, they had been unsuccessful. However, they had managed to create a safe zone within the base, and they were working on finding a way to clear the town of the zombies. Lily and her group were relieved to finally be in a safe place, but they knew that they couldn't stay there forever. They wanted to find a way to help the soldiers and also find a way to escape the town. They soon discovered that the soldiers were working on a project called Project Zomboid. It was a plan to lure the zombies away from the town and into a remote location where they could be contained and hopefully studied for a cure. Lily and her group volunteered to help with the project, knowing that it was their best chance of escaping Muldroff. They spent the next few weeks gathering supplies and preparing for the plan. Finally, the day came for Project Zomboid to be put into action. The soldiers had set up a loudspeaker system and were playing music to attract the zombies. Lily and her group were tasked with leading the zombies to a nearby quarry where they would be contained. The plan seemed to be working at first, but then the unexpected happened. A storm hit the town, causing the loudspeakers to malfunction and the music to stop. The zombies who had been following the sound were now scattered and wandering aimlessly. Lily and her group quickly realized that they had to act fast. They split up, each taking a different route to try and lead the zombies back to the quarry. They fought their way through the streets, using whatever weapons they could find to defend themselves. It was a chaotic and intense battle, but in the end, they managed to lead the zombies to the quarry. The soldiers were waiting for them, and they quickly closed off the entrance, trapping the zombies inside. Lily and her group were hailed as heroes by the soldiers, and they were given a reward for their bravery. The soldiers also revealed that they had found a way to create a cure for the virus, and they were working on distributing it to other safe zones. With the town finally free of the zombie threat, Lily and her group were able to leave Muldroff and make their way to a nearby safe zone. They were relieved to finally be in a place where they didn't have to constantly worry about being attacked by zombies. As they settled into their new home, they reflected on their journey and how far they had come. They had gone from being strangers to a close-knit group facing unimaginable challenges together. They had survived and found hope in a world that seemed to have none. And as they sat around the campfire, sharing stories and laughing, they knew that they had each other to rely on. They were a family now, bonded by the shared experience of surviving the zombie apocalypse. And they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way together. It was a beautiful day in the town of Sunnyvale. The sun was shining, birds were chirping, and the flowers were blooming. But little did the citizens know, there was a sinister force lurking just beyond the town's borders. The town had been invaded by a horde of zombies, led by the notorious Dr. Zomboss. The zombies were wreaking havoc, destroying everything in their path and turning innocent citizens into mindless, brain-eating monsters. But the citizens of Sunnyvale weren't going to go down without a fight. They had a secret weapon plants. These weren't your average plants, they were armed with weapons and powers to take down the zombies and defend their town. The leader of the plant army was a brave and determined sunflower named Sunny. She had been chosen by the wise and ancient Tree of Wisdom to lead the plants in their battle against the zombies. Sunny gathered her team of plants, which included a pea shooter named Pete, a chomper named Charlie, and a cactus named Kathy. They were ready to take on the zombies and protect their town. The game began with the arrival of the first wave of zombies. Sunny and her team quickly sprang into action, using their specialized abilities to defeat the zombies. Pete shot peas at the zombies, while Charlie devoured them with his sharp teeth. Kathy used her spiky needles to impale the zombies, all while Sunny provided sun power to keep the plants energized. As they battled through the waves of zombies, Sunny and her team encountered some of Dr. Zomboss's most dangerous creations. There were conehead zombies with protective cones on their heads, bucket-head zombies with metal buckets on their heads, and even dancing zombies that distracted the plants with their groovy moves. But the plants were determined to protect their town, and they fought bravely. As they progressed through the game, they gained new plants with different abilities, such as a freezing pea shooter and a potato mine that exploded on contact. The zombies, however, were not backing down. As the game went on, they became more and more powerful. They brought in gargantuan zombies that were almost impossible to take down, as well as flying zombies that could avoid the plants' attacks. But Sunny and her team never gave up. They strategized and used their powers wisely, and with each wave, they grew stronger and more determined. Finally, the moment they had been waiting for arrived, the final showdown with Dr. Zomboss himself. The plant army marched towards his lair, ready to defeat him once and for all. As they entered the lair, they were met with a massive robotic zombie controlled by Dr. Zomboss. The plant army knew that this was going to be their toughest battle yet. Dr. Zomboss taunted the plants, laughing maniacally as his robotic zombie attacked them. But Sunny and her team were not afraid. They fought with all their might, using all their plants and abilities to take down the robotic zombie. But just when it seemed like they were winning, Dr. Zomboss revealed his secret weapon, a giant, flying zombie that breathed fire. The plant army was caught off guard, and Sunny realized that they needed to come up with a new strategy. She remembered the Tree of Wisdom's advice minus the key to victory is unity. Sunny rallied her team, and they all worked together, using their abilities in perfect harmony. They froze the giant zombie with icy peas, while Charlie took a bite out of its wings. Kathy used her needles to distract it, and Pete shot one final, powerful peat that knocked the zombie out of the sky. With the giant zombie defeated, Sunny and her team focused their efforts on Dr. Zomboss. They used all their plants and powers to take him down, and finally, after a long and intense battle, they emerged victorious. The citizens of Sunnyvale cheered as the zombies retreated, and the town was once again safe. Sunny and her team were hailed as heroes, and they were honored by the mayor for their bravery and strength. As the sun set on Sunnyvale, the plant army celebrated their victory. They had proven that with unity and determination, they could overcome any challenge. As for Dr. Zomboss, he retreated back to his lair, vowing to one day return and seek revenge. But for now, Sunny and her team could rest easy, knowing that they had saved their town from the zombie invasion. And as long as they stood together, they knew they could face any future threats that may come their way.